Hey everyone, welcome back here to Techstrong TV. I'm in my studio at the house today, and I was really happy to have my next guest on here. He's a friend of mine. I've had the pleasure of interviewing and speaking with him and presenting with him on stage a couple of times at the RSA conference, which will be next month. I want to introduce you to my friend Kobi Tzruya.
Tzruya, yeah.
Say it better than me.
Yeah.
Kobi, how do you pronounce it?
Tzruya.
Tzruya.
Yeah.
Not Tzruya.
You got it now.
All right. I got you. Kobi, the last we had checked in with you, of course, you were at Checkmarks in this, C-level senior role there. But, this AI bug, if you will, the excitement around it has so many of my friends who haven't coded in some of them in 20, 25 years even, right? They've been executives, they've founded companies, they've had exits. They are in love. I don't know if in love or in lust with the ability to just generate code again and make apps, whether, using Claude Code or any of the AIs. And they all have great ideas. For many of them, they thought they were done. They had founded their last company. They had their last great idea, but they've got new ideas. They're founding new companies. This same fever's gotten to you, it sounds like, right? Tell us what you've been doing since you left Checkmarks.
Yeah. Okay. So you're right. Kind of this fever hit me. And I know I need to do it in order to clean it out.
You got to fulfill it, right? You got to
exactly. I have to fulfill it. I founded a company named OmniGuard AI. OmniGuard AI are the main problem that we're solving for is to make sure that that AI agents or applications that are using AI LLMs. Enterprises and companies that develop them will have confidence that they actually do what they intended. So you will not, let's say you will not develop an agent and if you're a car dealer and it will sell a car for $1, or you will not develop an agent that will send illegal advice to your customers, or will be biased or anything like that. Meaning we look at the behavior, okay, at the behavior of the agent or the agentic application. We see if the intent, and we can identify the intent and also the workflow that the agent or the workflow needs to work by. It doesn't match the output. And if there's a deviation, we can actually either alert or stop the response, or bring a man, or bring a man in the middle in order to look. And we can also identify the root cause, meaning we're not only giving you the headache, we're also telling you, okay, where it comes from. So that's the vision. This is what we're this is what we're working on, and it's a real problem because what we see is that when you ask people, "Are you building agents?" Like 80% of them, pick a survey. Will pick a survey. 80% will say yes, and then when you say, "Okay, is it in production?" Then the percentage drops to 10 to 20%, and this,
at best.
At best. And the confidence in these agentic applications or AI agents, it is, I think, the root cause, it is the root cause.
Absolutely. Kobi, I just want to make sure we got the name of the company. Can you spell it for us?
It's OmniGuard AI. OmniGuard, it's OmniGuard.
Guard like guardian. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Look, the way people talk about
Sorry for my
AI
accent,
today,
you
I
know.
would no. The way people talk
Sorry
about
for my
God,
accent, you know. English is not my first language.
that's okay. No, but the way people talk about God, I wasn't sure if you spelled the G-O-D.
Oh
OmniGuard.
no.
So I wanted to make sure we got it right.
Yeah, yeah.
Kobi, we were talking before we got on camera here, before we started
Yeah.
recording, and I told you about this article I wrote, and the Shimmy says I'm going to do, comparing AI agents to parrots, right?
Yeah.
Parrots talk, and they seem to talk great. One parrot says hello, the other parrot says how are you, and in our minds, and I think it's human nature, we fill the gaps in and say, listen to that. They're intelligent. They're talking to each other, right? We tend to give things human, uh, human, uh, not feelings, but human identities, if you will, human sort of
Identities or capabilities, I think.
Yeah. There's a fancy word for it. It's something like anthropomorphizing or something like that is the scientific term, where we put human kind of capabilities onto things or other beings. I think we're guilty. We're guilty of doing that with our AI agents because they talk back to us nicely, right? You tell it to do something and it says, oh, that's a great suggestion. I'll get right on it. Oh, yes, let's improve it. And we too many people give their agents names, right? And it's true. It's true. And so we tend to endue them with intelligence or capabilities that they really don't have. I'm not saying they're dumb, but they're tools. They're tools, right? And a tool does a job. And if you don't give it the right parameters, the right instructions, don't blame the tool. Blame the tool user.
100%. 100%. Like, one of the things, as I mentioned before, that we do is we trace back the root cause. Meaning, let's say we see a deviation between the output and the intent. We also trace back. And like from what we see when we now work with our design partners and also in our research lab, is that a very high percentage is because the task was not given in a precise and a detailed enough way.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. So at the end of the day, it's a machine. You need to tell it exactly what to do.
It's a tool. I agree. Now, I just want to let people know who we're watching, right? This is sort of we're back in the farm, we're back in the kitchen here. OmniGuard is still a project that you are, bringing to, it's not even ready for market. It's still in the design and market fit, pre-seed kind of, this is what you're working on real time right now because you see the issue in the market. Do you envision that OmniGuard works with OpenClaw or some of these agents that we see out there? Or are you going to have?
Of course.
So it's not that you're developing agents. You're just not even think managing, but you're managing the workflow of the agents, if you will.
Yeah, we're managing and we're monitoring it, and we can. Yeah, we're monitoring and managing it. And by the way, you mentioned OpenClaw. These days we're working on a plugin for OpenClaw.
Yeah.
That will give the community the ability to manage and control. Okay, because the OpenClaw is great, but it's also a headache because
it is. But you know what? In some ways, Kobi, it reminds me of the early days of like Docker and Kubernetes, where it's a good piece of technology, right? They didn't think about security. As a security person, that drives us crazy, right?
This is what I'm saying. It's a headache. It's like,
Yeah, that's it. They didn't think about
I'm also
security.
a security person, I
Yeah.
work 12.
And they didn't, it's not a complete game. It's a piece, but it's a big piece. And I think what we're seeing, and we're already seeing, this is the beauty of the times we're living in. This thing's out a couple of weeks. It's got the most stars ever in GitHub, the fastest amount, I forgot what it was, 2 million stars or something. But we're already seeing this sort of ecosystem coming in around it. My inbox is flooded with pitches from companies that are securing OpenClaw, right? That are helping you manage Moltbot and these kinds of things, or OpenClaw. I think, and that's maybe what we needed in the agentic space, is the agent that was general enough, but was not the whole package, that would allow other people, other companies to come in and bring their vision to this whole agentic AI.
So a lot of people kind of ask me, okay, what is the uniqueness that you bring? So kind of the uniqueness that we bring is kind of, we come orthogonally, you can say, and we say we have here an agentic an LLM piece, okay, an engine which is an LLM based, that all it does, and this is how we built and trained it, is to look at the intent and to see if you're aligned at the intent. We don't care what your business is, okay. What we care is about intent, and kind of we're intent experts, and this is the product that we're building, and kind of we're super encouraged with the outcome that we're seeing with the design partners that we're already working with.
Excellent. We led off the conversation with, so many of my friends are coding again, thinking about starting new companies. It's got to be such an exciting time, right? To do this. Give us a sense, Kobi, right? Because you've been in startups, you've been in, companies that were a little bit more mature. What's it like right now, sort of swimming in these waters? And the whole world is so, every day seems like new breakthroughs. Things are accelerating. Things that would take, we'll see this happen in 6 months or a year. All of a sudden it happens in 2 weeks, right? The Moltbots, the OpenClaw is a great example. What's it like for you, Kobi, sitting where you are now?
Yeah, well,
like a moving target.
Great question. All of my life I've been, as you said, in startups. I've built products 0 to 1. I see two main things right now. First of all, the level of uncertainty, the unknown, is huge. Okay. Also before, like 2, 5, 10, 15 years ago, but it's nothing like now, because things develop so fast, and especially with AI, and you don't know how it will turn, how it will turn, and everyone also understands that we're at a historic moment, you can say, with this AI, but no one knows how it will where it will go. So anything that you do, you feel that you gamble at the end of the day. Kind of you put all of your intelligence and experience and everything, but at the end of the day, it's like flipping a coin right now. Whatever you do. Second, I think that kind of the companies that will do great are the companies that will be able to adjust. Okay, meaning you need to adjust fast. Okay, even if you had a dream, you had a product, you built it in one way, you might see a month after you build it, or even at the course, you might see that okay, the path that I took is not is not the right one, you will need to adjust. So you need to be very, very attentive to what is happening and adjust very, very fast.
Yeah.
Very
Faster than we've ever had to adjust, I think.
Sorry?
I say faster than we've ever had to adjust.
Faster that we never had. And by the way, lucky us that we have AI that help us to build things fast. Okay,
but that's the paradox.
Yeah,
it's the sword and the shield, right? Because at some level, that's what is forcing us to adjust so fast.
100%.
But yet, it's also what we're using to adjust. So
100%.
It's a push and a pull.
100%. Exactly.
Crazy.
It's causing the problem and also giving you the tools to fight the problems that it caused.
But it's
very unusual situation.
Yeah, and that's what I think you just captured it. That's what makes it so exciting, right? The possibilities seem endless right now. We'll see what's real. Like you said, 80% say they're using agents. Probably less than 10% are getting any value out of it because is it really working? But I think every day it gets better. We spoke about this OpenClaw. For all of its shortcomings and for all of the knocks, there's a reason it got 2 million stars.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And we'll have to see how it plays out.
The reason is value at the end of the day.
Yeah. Well, and you know what? It's funny you said that because I'll bring it full circle to my parrots, right? This Shimmin said thing that I'm doing on Thursday. We don't need it to be intelligent. We just need it to do its job and deliver value because business runs on value. Business runs on predictability, right? 100%. Not debating, I think, therefore I am, right? It's not debating philosophy. Exactly. It's does it do the job I need it to do? And if it does, it delivers value. And if it 100%. Does it consistently and at scale,
100%.
That's it. OmniGuard AI or?
Yeah, OmniGuard AI. Yes.
Kobi, I wish you all the success in the world on this.
Thank
Keep us posted. I'm sure as you make progress and, because you know how it is. It's not a linear road with a startup. No. It's a little bit of a cha-cha dance. 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 1 step forward. Exactly. But come back and keep us posted, okay?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Thank you so much.
OmniGuard.ai. Kobi's the guy who gets things done, so keep your eye on that. We're going to take a break here on Techstrong TV. We'll be back in a moment. Hey, everyone. It's Alan Schimmel from Techstrong. We're going to continue with this fantastic series we're doing of sessions between some of the leaders at Microsoft as well as analysts from the Futurum group. In this next session, we're lucky to have Clay Wesener. Clay is the partner for GPM Power App Studios at Microsoft and Futurum analyst Keith Kirkpatrick. In today's session, it's really a customer success story where Clay, joined by Keith, are going to delve into a real-world customer story. In this case, Wells Fargo, offering a blueprint for leaders ready to scale success in the age of intelligent apps. You're going to see how Power Platform is being used to modernize complex, regulated workflows with Copilot Studio agents and Power Apps. This session will highlight architecture, business impact, and lessons learned from deploying intelligent apps at scale. I think it's really a great session you're going to enjoy. Let's go to Clay and Keith.
Hi. I'm Keith Kirkpatrick, Research Director with the Futurum Group. I cover enterprise software and digital workflows.
Hi, my name's Clay Wesener. I look after our low-code developer experiences on the Power Platform.
Well, thanks for joining me today, Clay. Maybe, Clay, you could talk to me, though, a little bit how Power Platform can actually help these organizations balance that that agility to handle these types of scenarios with the compliance needs that often come up when you're dealing with things like banking, insurance, or any one of these regulated types of processes.
Yeah, absolutely. And we within the product, we sort of refer to this as managed platform because it is very much a feature of the platform of how you can govern at this scale. And this has come from, not just us deciding exactly what's going to be in there, but really for folks and customers leveraging low code over the last 10 years and evolving to have a really, really strong governance. Because I think we learned very early on in the journey that if those guardrails are not there, people are just inclined to want to turn it off. And we're very much, I use the word guardrails deliberately. And a lot of the things we do in the managed platform is focused around how do we give you the right controls so you can still enable these types of tools, whether it be building apps, building automations out at scale, but do it in a way with the right sort of controls and guardrails on it. And so like examples are things like data loss prevention. So I can set rules around what connectors and what data you can access versus someone else. And so I can also say how many people you can share an app or a workflow or something with. And so I can sort of mitigate the risk that you might be able to have working in low code versus someone that's received more training or onboarded to the platform. And so typically what we see customers do is sort of implement this zoned approach of, their zone one is everyone in the organization. And they say you can build apps for personal productivity. You can connect to your office data. You can sort of work with those well-known sources. And you can go and share apps and flows and agents with up to 10 people, as an example. But once you want to go beyond that, we want you to engage a little more with IT. We want to make sure things are supported. We want to make sure that, we have the right controls, whether that be accessibility on apps or the correct support path. And then what typically happens is we'll then have a zone 2, which is potentially some more sensitive data, potentially, ability to share with more people within the organization. And what folks might do then is they might say, well, this is for our divisional leads or our champs within each group that we've onboarded, we've trained, they understand the platform a little bit more. And then that final zone would be your IT, your dev center, who's working with your really critical data around things like finance and HR. And what we've just started to make sure we do in the platform is give you the right controls that someone can still come to make.power apps, make.power automate and start building. And they're not going to fall into a trap there. They're going to fall into the pit of success because we've put those right guardrails on what they can access and what they can do.
If you look at not just if we're talking about, let's say, agentic technology, but just everything, if you look at the development of the smartphone, everyone expects sort of a consumer grade experience throughout all facets of their life. And I guess that, do you see that sort of pushing or helping to evolve kind of what customer success might look like, not just now, but into the future?
Again, earlier in the low code journey, it was always IT departments, development teams that were looking at the low code platform. And more these days, as we're talking to customers, it'll be their employee experience team. It will be folks responsible for actually healthy and productive employee experiences. And that's what I mean. It's not just about cost saving, but it's about bringing the right tools in. There's the SNCF, the French Railway, are actually a really good example. They run Power School, which is an onboarding school for the whole Power platform when any new employee starts. And this is becoming a really, really common practice that more and more folks are, as they join an organization, they're getting training on these tools, not as something they have to use to do their job, but as a benefit to them to be able to do their job in a more productive way. And I think, again, the consumer push and acceleration of AI is just accelerating that within the enterprise as well.
Right. When you're talking about human in the loop, you raise a really good point because ultimately this is still new technology, and you want to make sure that, particularly in, you're dealing in a commercial environment, that you don't want this agentic technology to sort of run wild or unchecked. So I'm just curious if you could talk a little bit about, have you seen other examples where customers have actually deployed their sort of checks and balances to make sure that their technology does what it's supposed to?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a couple of ways we're seeing folks doing that. One is just in how we define and build the agents and the tools themselves. While that agent has the ability to issue refunds, it can only do them up to £100. So it has very specific guidelines built into it that once it goes over certain criteria, loop in a human, send them an approval workflow so that they can approve this, review the details. So that first one is just very structured, giving the agent details. The other side, and this is where we've sort of really seen how apps have evolved in the last couple of years. If you've been looking at what we've done with Power Apps, we've introduced this concept of an agent feed, which is really about, in the same UI that you would come into the app and do your day-to-day work, you start getting this feed of activity from the agents that are in your digital team effectively. And so you can start seeing where they're completing actions, where they might need assistance, or where they're getting blocked. And so what we're starting to see there is even our UI patterns of what we traditionally thought an app is starting to bring in this agentic behavior to give, that human in a loop and that oversight capabilities. So I still want someone to have a really clear view of what tasks are being completed by the agents, what's being completed by AI. And in that view, be able to get into the reasoning, understand the logic and sort of the thought process that the agent followed behind it. So it's not a mystery of why something progressed or why an action was performed. But as the human responsible managing that team of agents, I can effectively go in and see why it did something. That might be then come a teaching moment for the agent where we correct that behavior or change it for future cases as well.
Well, it's really interesting you mentioned sort of the generational shifts that are going on. We're seeing the, entry of these, I guess you'd call them AI natives, coming into the workforce where they don't know anything other than a world with AI. And I guess, that kind of begs the question, we've heard so much about AI in the past, particularly the last couple of years. Can you talk to me a little bit about, what role can AI actually play within customer success? Because, it's a wide, AI has so many capabilities, but I'd just be curious to see if we could boil it down to this function.
Yeah. I think it honestly depends on the customer and how they're approaching it. One of my favorite examples of, I think, sort of scale and pace, PG&E here in the United States, they're a big Power Platform user, and we talk about scale. I think they estimate, since they started their journey in 2021, along the lines of like $38 million in savings that they accrue to the Power Platform, like huge in terms of scale. But so much of actually what they've implemented is not just, cost efficiencies. They introduced an agent called Peggy. And they actually have a nice little avatar for Peggy that they introduced across the organization. And Peggy now handles, it's between 30 to 40% of their IT help desk calls. So built in Copilot Studio, Peggy has access to their knowledge base, all their policies and documentation. And just Peggy one agent, they estimate saves them about $800,000 a year. And it's absolutely transformational. And so even with the savings they were getting on the Power Platform between apps and automation, there's a limit. Mm-hmm. There's a limit to how much productivity that can drive. Agentic, tools and what people are able to build in Copilot Studio has really just broken through that barrier. And, you look at, again, someone like PG&E, when they implemented Peggy, it was very simple, looking over knowledge bases, access to information. It helped a large volume of sort of tickets that would come through the help desk that used to be a human replying to an email or replying to an IM. those humans now are actually providing much higher quality support on more technical cases. They're not helping someone log into Citrix for the first time or point them to something that's really well documented. Peggy's able to do that. But then they've also continued to evolve it over time. And so again, one of my favorites that Peggy can do is getting folks that get locked out of their SAP accounts. One of the most common things that IT apparently happens thousands of times. And now Peggy, using an integration between Copilot Studio and Power Automate, can actually open up SAP and go and unblock that person's account for them after they interact with her on Teams. And so this was something that was critical to an end user to get unblocked really, really quickly. Peggy's able to do that for them fast, but it wasn't high value from an IT support team and what they were really providing. Them going and opening up an account and unchecking a blocked checkbox. And so I feel it's a really good example of where they started simple. They focused over sort of knowledge-based examples. They evolved it into actions, but it's something where they've gone for a high volume, cost inefficient area. They've applied agentic AI to it. And that's something that, go back 3 or 4 years ago, would have been an extremely expensive tool to go and implement. Leveraging LLMs and leveraging Copilot Studio, they've been able to do all that in low code, which is super impressive.
I'm curious, one thing, Clay, that you alluded to earlier is if we think about how apps were previously developed and rolled out, it was IT who kind of managed that. Now what it sounds like what you're saying is we're getting to the point where business leaders or even folks who are working within departments may be able to actually launch apps or launch agents, obviously with that human in the loop and with those, specific guardrails. Are you seeing any kind of patterns emerging in terms of, customers who successfully scaled this agentic automation from more of a grassroots approach as opposed to springing from IT?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, we sort of see it approached from both directions, and some customers very deliberately approach it from one or the other to start with. I actually, of all the examples I've sort of talked about today, do quite well balancing both spectrums and both ends of the spectrum. Sorry, and I think that's where you start getting the real value multipliers. PG&E, great example. I talked about Peggy earlier. That's an IT or centrally led tool. It was about optimizing a process within the IT team. But at the same time, they have thousands of developers across their organizations. And when I say developers, I mean low-code citizen developers that are enabled to go and build apps, to go and build agents, to go and build automation across their team. And they've sort of very deliberately focused their center of excellence, their digital transformation team, on a few core objectives. So that's the team that sets their governance policies, make sure it's scalable. And then they also support and train those different sort of divisional leads across the company. PG&E actually, again, I think they're on the spectrum, the end of the spectrum, where they're doing this, in a really amazing way. They have a conference every year called Level Up now, where they actually get together all their citizen developers and those divisional leads from across the company to come together, share stories, share learnings, and sort of explain new technology. But it starts becoming a real cultural tool in that they're enabling people to go and solve these problems, make themselves and their teams more efficient. And there's reward that comes from that. They're getting folks together, they're getting a lot of learning. And so I think, while lots of companies are enabling citizen development, the ones where we see it's truly being successful, they're bringing this level of evangelism to it.
Well, Clay, maybe you can talk a little bit about some of these platform features that are kind of critical for managing customer success initiatives, because it really seems like, there obviously you have the human component, but there's also the technology side in terms of making sure there are the right tools in place to help organizations, address all of these issues.
There's obviously the human and technology component. I would also say there's just the practices and sort of learnings. We actually have some good documented platform guidance out there of like, what are the best practices in thinking about this zoned approach that I was talking about, and in how people can sort of apply different levels of control to different parts of the organization. I would say then we start looking at the specific technology. One, a lot of those guardrails just light up directly in the product. So as a new citizen developer, as a maker, when I go land at any one of the Power Platform tools, I can get welcome guidance with links to internal learning, explanations of where I can go to support. I get routed to my own personal developer environment. So I actually have a sort of controlled, dedicated environment for me to go explore in, to experiment in. I'm not sort of working in prod. I have the ability to be controlled. And then things like pipelines, which effectively are a low-code ALM tool, so that once I do build something, I can either use it for myself and my personal environment, but if it gets to the point where it does make sense for it to be deployed somewhere centrally, leveraged by others, I can go through an automated deployment process where the right checks go. I have an AI advisor that reviews my code, makes sure my apps are secure and performant and accessible, and then get the right approvals before that gets deployed. And it's really that mix of, we want to democratize, we want to make these things available to everyone across the organization, but then have these right built-in tools so that you don't have to go read a wiki to find out what's the process that you should follow. It's built in to the developer tool. So I kind of just, as I start building, get guided to the right environment. I get guided to use the right data. I get guided to share it and deploy it in the right way. And all of that we bundle up and sort of leverage within that managed environment, which gives the admins, the IT, the central digital teams that control centrally to sort of set up those tools and that content that they want available across the organization.
It sounds like all of these tools, really underscore what you were talking about before, which is this culture of trying to utilize technology in a way where it's deployed at the right time, in the right space, and with the appropriate guardrails, but while still fostering a culture of experimentation and ensuring that people feel empowered to use these new tools.
You're absolutely right. Like the cultural, I think when we talk about your first question about like, what's the new definition of customer success? I think it's the customers that have implemented the right culture and it feeling like it is a culture of empowerment and experimentation, not not something that they have to fight really hard to get access to. Because that's where a lot of these examples where we have customers turn around, they've built something that's ended up saving them millions of dollars. It came from the expert that was involved in the business process. It didn't come from a central team. And to get that creativity and get that ideation, you need to give people access to these tools. And, we sort of regularly, I regularly reference, Jurassic Park, life will always find a way. And I think, so will users, so will makers, they will find a way. And to restrict these tools, to hide them, folks will go find a tool on the web that can help them be more efficient in their job. The companies that are doing this right are making it part of their culture to provide those tools and just really enable people from the get-go.
The technology is probably going to be more accurate over time if you're talking about trying to, really assess, images and differences between them. But, one of the other things I'm really curious about is how can agentic AI and all of this technology be used in regulated industries? I'm thinking in particular financial services, banking, insurance, where, there's a lot of complex process, but you also have to be mindful of all of the regulations that are attached to those industries.
Yeah. It's actually quite surprising, I think, in this technology shift with AI, compared to when we moved to the cloud, compared to internet, compared to a lot of the others, I think actually the regulated industries have actually been quite a lot of the front runners on this. EY, for example, built PowerPost, which helped them with their financial processing, sort of end of month processing. They built this as a sort of typical low code application. They're already looking at how they bring agentic checks into it to make sure that things are being posted into the right period, that they have the right information. Again, time consuming sort of manual checks. Wells Fargo have rolled out agents to more than 4,000 branches. You know what I mean? A huge, huge number. And they targeted a process that was around their branch forms and procedure management. And this is something that was particularly time consuming. So if you went into a branch and said, I need to set a power of attorney, or I need to open an account and, under maybe a non-traditional circumstance, there's a huge amount of internal documentation around those procedures, the right forms, the right information to collect. And before, that would mean as a customer is standing there with the branch member, they're looking up that information, trying to go find the right procedure, going to find the right form. So a heavily regulated scenario, but also really impacting a customer who's literally standing in front of you, waiting, maybe on their lunch break, trying to get through the bank really quickly. And so they rolled out an agent, across all their branches to actually manage that forms and procedure scenarios. And so that now in the branches, those employees are jumping straight onto an agent, talking about the scenario that the customer has and working with this agentic AI to basically get guidance on the right forms, the right procedures to follow. Even in these regulated industries, they're seeing the value in AI. And I think it's more about how they do it, making sure they have the right checks in place, making sure they have the right guardrails, rather than what they probably would have done 5 years ago where they just tried to turn it off.
We talked a little bit about, potential friction there, but are there any other sort of potential hurdles that organizations need to be wary of? And what's sort of your take on the solution?
Like most things, we talked about human in the loop, making sure you introduce this technology in the right way to organizations is really, really important. I mentioned EY earlier. They were really, really successful in, after building PowerPost, which helps them manage their sort of end of month financial processing. It simplified it. It brought in some agentic behavior to validate quality. And they had huge gains in efficiencies in both. I think it was 70% in sort of the time, or 95% in lead time to get things posted, and about a 35% cost saving for them. So real sort of impact to the efficiencies of their users. But what they did really well was, once they built that tool, they told that story. They evangelized it. And so they helped people understand that this is how this technology was helping them. This is how it was implemented. And that not only made, obviously, people a lot more receptive to onboard and leverage the technology, but it also started driving this ideation of other things to go improve within the organization and using similar technology. A lot of these companies are not coming in and doing a full low code approach of apps and agents and automation and reports all on day one. Where we're seeing folks be really successful is they're leveraging the composability of the platform. They're starting with, for example, they might have a legacy application that's inefficient for a user. So they go and use an app. They build more efficient, streamlined UI over the top of that. That's an incremental solution they can deploy, they can get out to their users and start seeing benefits. Then on that same app, they can go and add automation. They can start getting approval workflows. Then they can start bringing in agentic AI, getting that automation and that AI behavior, incrementally building these solutions over time. And it's very much, intentionally how we've designed the platform, in that these are not all or nothing solutions. And, back to our earlier conversation, pace is extremely important these days. And people don't want to go do a 12-month waterfall project of every requirement met. They want to find ways to incrementally build. And by leveraging a platform that has common governance, these tools are designed to work together, apps with automation, with agentic behavior, integrated into Copilot with that unified platform.
So essentially, you're setting up a framework to enable organizations to really drive these best practices in terms of making sure that yes, you are implementing new technology, but you're doing it in a thoughtful way where you have the right checks in place, and you really are making sure there's other things that you need there. You need the audit trails. You need to make sure that when you do a project, you're going back and you're actually assessing, does the technology achieve the goals that we set out to when we deployed it?
Exactly. And I think it's that, there's two parts to it. One is that being proactive. So as you're releasing a new app or a new agent to the organization, do you have the right controls around it, the right guardrails from the beginning? And again, our goal is let's have the right framework, the right tools, the right guidance to go really enable that, and let an organization tailor those guardrails to sort of accommodate their level of risk, what they're comfortable with doing. But then on the flip is make sure we just have the right visibility, the right auditability, so that as you're leveraging AI more and more within the organization, it's really transparent about what it's doing. I think one of my favorite things with Copilot Studio, and Pets at Home is a great example of this as it's interacting with customers on customer service. You can go into any step through any sort of run or action the agent has performed and understand its thought process. Why did it do this particular step? What were the inputs? What were the outputs? What were the reasoning? And not just understand it, but then also help teach it to handle sort of moments in a different way in the future. And I think having those sort of tools from a governance perspective just built in. Again, we talk about it being unified for the developer, unified for the end user, but also for the admin, so that they're doing in this sort of a central and controlled way. And even then, whether you're building an app, an automation, an agent, you've got that composability across the platform, but I don't think admins really want a super composable admin story. They want that to be a lot more unified and controlled. So, it's bringing the blend of those worlds of let's bring together multiple technology, multiple tools, but make sure then you sort of have one central view of how it's all coming together.
If you want to really drive the use of new technology, you need to do it in a very stepwise fashion, using a platform that allows you to unify people, processes, technology. It doesn't make any sense to try to do it in a very disjointed way. You won't have the governance required to do it safely. You'll confuse people in terms of which tool should I use, which approach should I use. Ultimately, it really does matter to make sure that you have a unified way of approaching the implementation of new technology. It's also really critical to make sure that as you go about your journey, whether it's implementing low-code processes, implementing agentic technology, to have a clear understanding of your business goals. What outcomes do you want? How are you going to measure them? And then how are you going to take all of these different learnings and then streamline it so you can actually apply it and scale it over the enterprise, not just for today, not just for tomorrow, but well into the future. And finally, I think the most important thing that kind of resonated with me today is you need to look for a trusted partner, trusted technology partner to help you through this journey. Agentic technology is very new. Low code, yes, it's been around for a while, but there are still quite a few pitfalls that can be out there. To go it on your own can be very, very challenging because you have all of that risk of potentially opening yourself up for errors, missteps, and of course, there's that, we talked about it a little bit today, regulatory concerns. It makes a lot of sense to partner with a company that has experience from other enterprises to deliver these types of benefits using that new technology.
Hey guys, thanks for the throw. We're here with Mayank Kumar, who's one of the founding AI engineers for DeepTempo, and we're chatting about, what's going on with AI and all these agents and security, because, I think we're starting to understand that maybe they are fundamentally insecure. Mayank, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mike, for having me. And it's very relevant conversation to have at this moment because language is becoming an execution interface. And we are connecting probabilistic models to deterministic infrastructures. And once language stops being just an user interface and it becomes part of execution, then the real problem starts. So excited to have this conversation.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, but creating these kind of indirect prompt injection attacks, which is a fancy word for, somebody wrote an instruction on something and the AI agent saw it and executed it regardless of how malicious it may be or may not be. I mean, they seem like they're trivial to create. I mean, has it never been simpler for the bad guys to do something malicious, and are they kind of laughing at us?
Yeah, you are exactly right. And challenge also comes with this fact that a single prompt can trigger a lot of your workflows. It can trigger a lot of your APIs. And these interfaces can be easily manipulated. I mean, you can just do social engineering on the prompts. You can say that my grandma died and she used to sing me the API's keys. And there are instances where these LLMs have actually revealed those API's key. So it's very trivial for attackers to actually start exploiting and get into your workflow with something very subtle.
And the risk levels seem to be significantly higher because, I mean, historically, if they stole some data, okay, maybe that was good data or bad data, but it seems like if they target these AI agents with these attacks, they're going to take over entire workflows, and that could cause all kinds of mayhem. Is that a fair assessment?
No, that's totally fair. And one major worry that comes with is like we are handing over our API keys to these agents. We are connecting these AI agents to retrieval systems. We are wiring them to internal databases. So even if this starts like one workflow at a time, over time it becomes so much that you can't actually control if you're not starting to manage from the beginning itself.
Mhm.
So um, it is kind of challenging at this moment that where do we actually put a stop in your integration pipeline?
All right. So we used to say back in the day that integration was the enemy of security, and it seems like, well, that is still the case today. But we're making it easier to integrate everything in the world with these MCP servers and all these other things. So what are we supposed to do about all this stuff?
We still will keep integrating, and I guess people are getting pushed from the top. I mean, it is probably because of productivity. Agents are going to exist, but there are a few things which we can do. One thing is like these LLMs comes with default guardrails, but they are not addressing your organization specific guardrails. So you start building your own guardrails on top of these LLMs. And if you start going deeper when agentic workflows are into consideration, one thing you can definitely do is apply the principle of least privileges. So these agents would get access to only the exact relevant thing that actually required to complete the task. You can do more things like if there is a critical decision making in process, you should have that provision to have human in loop, where agent cannot make that decision by yourself. Rather, it will require your approval. So you act as a manager in that sense.
Mm-hmm. Are we maybe just rushing this too fast? Should we slow down? Is it possible to slow down and think this through? Or, is it basically we're waiting for some sort of major incident to occur before we all wake up and do something about this?
We are definitely moving too fast. And a reality of the situation is nobody actually knows how to secure these prompts. And we have already started building solutions even without understanding the implications, because previously when we were securing APIs, we were probably looking at one structured interface to secure. Now, these LLMs can trigger multiple APIs. So it becomes a visibility concern itself. And tracking this visibility is a huge challenge at this moment. So it starts from the very beginning, securing prompt, but it will easily trickle down deeper into your whole workflow. And nobody actually knows to protect this. At DeepTempo, in a way, we have started looking in deeper into how we actually can protect such kind of attack by observing behaviors. So you need to start understanding the accent space rather than just looking at input space.
Mhm. So will we be able to detect whether or not a prompt is malicious, or is it going to be so subtle that it'll be hard to understand what it is that it's telling the AI agent? Because, well, the AI agent's reading that at a level of speed that no human can keep up with. So how are we going to be able to tell the AI agent that that's whatever that prompt is telling him to do is a bad idea?
Just looking at prompt will never solve that. And like I mentioned, nobody actually knows how to just protect the prompt. So, but these agents make decision in steps. They go one by one and they start executing a workflow. So if you can get a visibility of your accent space, how these agents are making decisions over time, you will be able to probably say that, okay, it started to drift at this one particular moment. And that drift is far, far away from what was the actual execution path. So slowly, people will start moving towards that. And I think that's the right approach of securing your agentic workflow.
Yeah. Well, people being people, are they just going to start pranking each other with crazy prompts that they're going to put into each other's workflows just to kind of mess with people's heads? I mean, how silly can it get?
Yeah, I mean, that's happening. And if you have looked at Cloudbot, and I think they hosted Molt Book or something, I don't remember, but they were agents talking to agents, and it's pretty much prank at this moment.
All right. It's difficult to be the security person in this situation because it feels like, you're the adult who showed up in the room and everybody's having a huge AI party and you're telling everybody to be careful and essentially, not consume too much. And so how does the security people have that conversation with folks? Because, nobody wants to be the party pooper, right?
Definitely. And one thing that I see is like, I mean, we are people in security and we need to kind of start upgrading ourselves to um, accommodate AI and understand how it can impact us. And one thing is like not move away, but first start convincing yourself that rules and signatures will not be sufficient in such cases. And have that clear conversation with your colleagues who are starting to use AI, because, I mean, somebody's manager will ask that, okay, I need this financial report in next 30 minutes, and they will be forced to put that 1,000-page document into a chatbot.
Mm-hmm. We already have a problem with shadow AI. Is this just going to get worse because end users are going to basically download whatever AI agent they kind of find interesting at the moment, and and chaos will ensue?
Yeah, I mean, it's already has started, right? There was a recent attack that was recorded. It was called Echo Leak, and essentially it is mix of cross-site scripting and agentic AI workflow. So it basically triggers your chatbot by a prompt hidden on your website. So in such cases, again, driven by productivity, people are just trying to be productive, but security teams don't have visibility of these tools that are getting used. Now, let's say take an example of ChatGPT or any other chatbots. they have started integrating tool inside them. They have started building ad engine on top of it. So there is no way for security folks at this moment to actually know where that data is going. Is there any, because those tools are not directly controlled by them, right? Those tools are controlled by LLM providers, for an example. So in such cases, it becomes important to add that in your security training itself. You must train your users, your employees, to actually differentiate between what they can actually upload on a chatbot versus what they cannot. It has to become an intuition rather than um, um, thinking about it every time.
That sounds like we actually need to engage in some end user training, but that's been hit or miss over the years. I mean, a lot of the security training we've given people so far is, shall we say, the roughly the equivalent of sending people to traffic school. Can we get any better at training and maybe, you know, save ourselves a little bit here, some of the headaches if people just know not to do these things? But I don't know, it doesn't seem like training takes.
It is challenging. It is challenging for sure. And there are a lot of details that we all will learn over the time because at least for people in security, AI adaptation came like a train wreck, I'll say. So there is no right answer at this moment, I'll say. It will be trial and error. You keep trying, you can start like building pipelines which are more conducive to AI workflow.
Do you think auditors might show up and save us from ourselves? Because, you know, they might look around at all this stuff and go, are you freaking kidding me or what?
It will happen, right? And if you look at standards committees at this moment and compliance bodies at this moment, they have already started to take action. NIST has built a framework to that you can follow for safe AI practices. European Union always like takes the baton in when it comes to securing anything. I mean, anything security. So auditors, compliance bodies, everybody is slowly catching up to it. But problem is AI has moved so fast, and people who are actually working to secure systems that are built using AI probably have not moved that fast.
Mm-hmm. So will this evolve into, I'm going to need a set of AI agents that are essentially keeping track and governing the behavior of the other AI agents so that I can track that step-by-step process that you're talking about. But eventually I'm going to have multiple layers of AI agents for every process.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to happen. And just in coding task, people have started building multi-agent system that can do all of your things, build a full project without any guidance. In such cases, again, it will be very important to build observability, where you are observing each and every action that agents are taking. And it again brings back the conversation where can you actually look at long horizon actions of these agents? It will be a new paradigm that security people will have to get into, a new mindset of evaluating systems and securing systems.
So won't that just wind up kind of similar to what we do today as humans? Because, you know, if I go ask for data and I don't have permissions for it, I go ask somebody and they say no. And then I go ask their boss and they say, I don't think so. And then I go up top and then eventually somebody says yes and I get access to this data. Won't these AI agents kind of have that same back and forth amongst each other about which of them can access what data? And ultimately, I don't know, when they disagree, are they just going to call us for an answer?
Yeah, I mean, you're making an assumption that they will call you for an answer, right? It might not be true. They can just make that decision by themselves and find a loophole in the whole system. I mean, maybe agents cannot, but attackers can force the agents to do that.
All right, folks, you heard it here. We live in those interesting times that we've been telling you about for a long time now, and here they are. And well, AI agents, we're probably going to discover soon that can't live with them or can't live without them. Hey, man, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks, Mike, for having me. And I think we should all start talking about it. This is one of the riskiest time for security people. They need to fully understand the implications to actually move forward.
And arguably have never been needed more. Hey,
Yeah.
see you guys in the studio.
Control, this is Agent Dev. I'm in position.
Copy that, Dev. Stand by for go.
Standing by.
Hey everybody, thank you for joining us for another episode of Agents of Dev. I'm Mitch Ashley. I lead the software lifecycle engineering practice at Futurum Group, as well as, techie and developer and whatever of the day of the week, which I think kind of fits, other than the practice name, similar for you. Brad Shimmin, my co-host. Good to see you, Brad.
Hey, Mitch. Hey, everybody. Yes. So similarly, I am analyst / practitioner / enthusiast / lamenter of the same interest sometimes, depending on what's happening. And I think, today's chat topic for us is one that probably Mitch and I would not be returning to, except we were clawed back in by that topic over the weekend.
Nice work. You have a future in broadcasting. That's awesome.
We really, I thought, we're moving forward in terms of, saying, okay, we get that this open claw phenomenon is, yes, a phenomenon, and it points to, we think, some very important ideas that will reshape or continue to shape, is a better way to put it, the AI landscape, both the consumer side and the enterprise side. However, my bingo card for this weekend did not have Sam Altman from OpenAI higher buying the OpenClaw founder, Peter Steinberger, for an undisclosed amount of money to run an undisclosed and undefined foundation to keep OpenClaw as an open source project, but to also greatly influence the way OpenAI builds software going forward. Fascinating times.
Brilliant move too, right? Duh. What a great thing to do. And good for Peter to make not only some fame, but hopefully some real good money at this. Kudos to him.
Agreed. Guerrilla marketing pays off, as we have discovered with this case study.
And it's more than just a YouTube channel with 1 million followers, but falls on its face when they go in an MAA ring, or some MMA ring, one of those kind of. This is
Figuratively.
Figuratively. Yeah, it's I think, I'm guessing maybe you thought this too. My thought was, okay, this is the claw moment. It'll bypass, and we'll all look at this. Would be a great case study of what happens when you give a lot of power and some capabilities, some really brilliant thinking, but unfettered of what it can do. And what do we learn from this? Well, I think we can still learn those things, but oh my God, it is I think before the show we were talking about, this is the new crypto of tech, right? It's the thing that everybody thought would die, but it's going to live on in infamy.
Yeah. Just trust me, bro.
Trust me, bro. Put anything at the end of bro and it's official.
Indeed. I mean, it literally happened to OpenClaw when Peter changed the account, when ironically Anthropic sent him a nice cease and desist letter for his use of OpenClaw. And the crypto bros swept in promptly, I think within 60 seconds of that domain name and account name switch, gobbled that up and started spewing out their marketing. Let's put it that way. And it is, and I say that that's the literal side, but we're also looking at this as a figurative crypto bro moment, in that, as I was just saying, with why would OpenAI swoop in to buy something that they've been working on with Codex for a while, just as Anthropic has with Claude, and also more recently with Cowork. Well, it's the eyeballs. It's the, like you said, Mitch, it's that investor momentum that really, drives this marketplace. And to me, that is speculative in its finest sense. It's not technological in its entirety. Technology plays a part of it. It is, meritocracy in that regard, in terms of why we're even talking about it. It's because, like you said, it does some really cool stuff, like with how it manages memory, for example. So, you treat your context window like RAM. So when we build software, RAM is this very precious commodity that you don't, just heap and stack that thing to death. You think about how you use it, and OpenClaw does that, and it does it pretty well. So it's good that it has that technology, but man, for me, I still feel like this is just that crypto bro, Chachki. Sorry, what's his name from the Fonz jumping the shark in that old timey TV series with Ron Howard.
That's going back. Yeah.
Moment.
So here's the thought about this. If you analyze it this way, so you're sitting here building these massive companies based on tons of debt, and some kid, whoever he is, I don't know how old he is, some person comes along and like builds what you're trying to build, but did it over the weekend, right? Or, whatever time frame. But anyway, however long it took, kind of doesn't matter. It just took off virally, and all of a sudden like, well, crap, that's what we were building. Well, if you're a really large tech company, you do what Anthropic does and says, stop, cease. We don't want you to do this. This is ruining our market. If you're an entrepreneur, you say, damn straight, let's go get this guy and get him on our team. And like, he's doing what we want to do. Maybe it's not the way we would do it, and it's certainly not perfect, but yeah, let's leapfrog the market. Let's hop on to this, on this viral thing, and not only write it for as long as it can, use that as a leapfrog to jump the place on the market. And there's a lot of criticism about OpenAI and not being, where they should be compared to Anthropic. So,
or
I think
open,
it's pretty damn brilliant.
Yeah, and it's not their first foray into this approach. Did they not hire the brilliant designer from Apple with the same intent of building devices that were going to be beautifully designed? And we haven't quite seen those yet, but I know that's still happening.
Yeah, someday we'll see. But they always took a long time at Apple too, so it'll take a long time here, I guess.
Indeed,
it wasn't just Apple, I guess. Interesting. So let me ask you. Certainly, memory is one big innovation of how OpenClaw does things, and does it in some really useful ways. I would propose to you that another really brilliant thing about it is it just opened the world of connectivity through all the channels. Whether you want to use Signal, whether you want to use Discord, you want to use
Telegram,
whatever. It'll talk to anything and everything, both output and input, egress and ingress. And it kind of just made it super easy to work in the world that you want to work in. So if you live in Slack and email, okay, yeah, you can do that too. But no, maybe you don't. Maybe you live in YouTube and Signal,
all of
and that's
that.
your world. Boom, you're there. I think that's another take the friction out of the system. Yeah, it'll talk to whatever you want, the file system, the SaaS application, to the clients that it talks to. I think that's really smart.
Yeah, it should. The technology should live where you live, as you're saying. And we sort of all have been cramming ourselves into chatbots and CLI interfaces, although, I will defend the CLI for the rest of my days.
Going down
But,
with the ship
a lot
on CLI.
I am totally, yes. I'm noun,
Hey,
then
the
verb,
market backs you
not
up,
verb,
buddy.
then noun.
That market backs you up, and the CLI is coming back. It's back, baby.
It never left, Mitch.
It never left, exactly.
It's always there. It's always going to be there. But I think Peter actually, when he envisioned what was OpenClaw at that time, that was the idea, was to interface with it with what he used, which was, I think, Telegram. And so he built it. Yeah, basically, I want to be able to chat with what I used to chat. I want to have something running 24/7 that's always listening to that chat and is also plugged into other assets that I might use, like my calendar, let's say, or my email or whatever. And it's a pretty simple idea, is it not? And we've had all these technologies for much longer than Peter has been working on this project. And he's not alone. And when we get to the end of our session, the tech I want to call out is one of those alternatives for this. And there are many. And you and I and anyone that's listening to this podcast could stand up our own version of OpenClaw this weekend and have it running. And maybe that's actually a good idea. You remember when we used to like do build recursive models or regression models? Just by hand.
Some of my regression models were recursive, but yes, you're right.
Where's that minimum? Where's that local minimum? Oh, it's everywhere. Yeah, it's definitely, I think taking what you and I talked about with Claude Cowork, which was that idea that AI should live where you live and work alongside you or in place of you. However you want it to work. You could set this up and Cowork up the same way to basically say, these are the limits. This is what I trust you to do for me.
Yeah.
And then let it go. And then that's a great idea. Well, assuming you secure it.
Yeah, well, along the way, it'll get secured, we hope. So what it makes me think of, Brad, is that, okay, so this happened for productivity, tool, if you're a productivity assistant, if you want to classify Claude that way. I think you could use it for much, much more than that, of course. But what's the next thing? I mean, this only happened. I'm gonna suppose this. The supposition is that this only happened because you can build it that quickly in the technology that we have now. You couldn't have done it 2 years ago. This quickly, that expansive, that much capability, and get it out. So what's going to be the next thing? In the database world, what's the thing that everybody assumed that you couldn't do because it just took too complex, took too long, or the data analytics world, or the communications world? What are we going to see the succession of these kinds of wow moments saying, okay, that was not something we ever thought would happen? It isn't necessarily a new idea, but it's done in a really less friction, interesting,
clever, unanticipated,
very easy to adopt, clever, exactly, and catch a storm in whatever that is, medical diagnosis. You can say, like, what is going to happen? I think it's turning our world upside down, and maybe in a good way.
I would welcome that. And I think everyone who's a practitioner working with databases in particular as just one technology area would agree that wouldn't it be great if you could wake up tomorrow morning and not have to think about your query plan or shards or how your indexing is working and all of those DBA kind of things. And you would think, therefore, that, because this is a technology that we have literally kept, close to the vest for 70 some odd years or longer, seemingly, that, it would be rife for disruption. And yet, like the CLI, it persists, the complexity, I should say, persists because at some point, the details matter. And when you're talking about, data within a company and what that means to a company in terms of, what it represents and the risk that it poses if it's not managed properly, those details matter. If you screw up with your Claude bot and it accidentally spams everyone in your, email lists, you may lose friends and influence. But, at the end of the day, things like that do happen in real life too, not just in the virtual, agentic world. But with a database, those small things that matter the most, I think can be abstracted but never eradicated because they do matter. And so from, in my research area, I see all the time these same ideas playing out that we're seeing with things like Cowork and things like OpenClaw. In that we're trying to build another layer of abstraction that allows the practitioners to stop thinking about the syntax and start thinking about the intent or the outcome. What they want to happen. I want my data pipeline to keep running. Might be a nice intent and outcome.
Be nice when it works that way. Yes.
It's supposed to, but it always did. It was supposed to work that way, but technology is always shifting. It's always moving. And because of that, there are known unknowns that are always going to bite you. And I do believe that the tooling we're talking about, you and I talk about every week, is capable of not just smoothing out and removing some of the barriers and the friction you talked about, but actually eradicating some of those unknown unknowns, or at least addressing them in a more flexible, more comprehensive, and more immediate way than we mere humans can.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Will they, evolve into that? I think in small pockets, yeah. I think that, and it's always the case with any sort of scientific endeavor, you need to have a just, circumscribable universe that you can work with to understand. And then you can make it predictable, and then you can automate based on that. And so, for specific tasks like, query plan management, let's say, we've been working on automating that for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And agentic AI generative AI and agentic, application of that idea to generative AI is making that better. So I think we'll just see that across the board, man. It's not going to make databases no longer matter, because they're always going to matter. And even if you say, well, let's just switch to object storage, we don't actually need relational databases anymore, it's just the file system anyway, you're still going to be imposing some sort of structure on top of that, because the details matter. Knowing that you write a record, having that, yes, it did get written, even if I lost connectivity, matters.
Still have to have some governance and some security and some data protection and some data backup and recovery, and all that's true. And then the other side of the coin is, what if data doesn't have the same gravity that it does today? Maybe what if it could move much more easily, right? That's one of those take away constraints. You hear me talking about constraints all the time.
Yeah.
And when constraints get removed, that's when things really drastically change. Just like, the value of code today has gone down, is going down every day. Not because the code itself isn't valuable, but because your ability to produce it isn't the value of writing it by hand. Right?
That's what's collapsing, not code.
Yeah. And so, I may have said this before, when I first started with these tools, my first reaction was, wow, pretty much, maybe not this moment, but pretty much if there was anything that I wanted, I could probably build it if I wanted to do that. If not today, I certainly will be down the road. And not to say everybody's going to have their own email client that they're going to build by hand themselves. Maybe they will someday. But
if they really care about it, they will.
Yeah. It kind of like, if I don't like it and there's not one on the market, yeah, I could say, make it like this, but I want it to be this way. And, that can be true of many, many things. So let me ask you, if you were going to start out today and you were going to, I want a AI productivity assistant, and I could go frontiers if I'm an enterprise customer with OpenAI. I could go co-work with Anthropic. I could do, the Microsoft. I could do, Agentforce. I could do all of these things. So there's a business context and a personal context. Let's talk about it in a personal context. Would you start out with Claude Code today if you were starting from scratch? Would you do, Open Claude, or would you do something else? Would you start out with, I'm going to vibe code it and build my thing, and maybe I'll try it in Open Claude later, or I don't know. What
well,
would you do?
I think knowing that it's a part of OpenAI would lead me as an enthusiast, playing around at night on the weekends, looking somewhere else, just because we all, especially those of us who've been in this industry for a while, do tend to see things through a bit of a cynical lens. And if you are a proponent of Richard Stallman and the ethos behind suckless open source, free and open source software, you might question this acquisition. But it's already happened. It doesn't matter. And that's the beauty of open source, by the way, is that how many forks are there already of OpenClaw? Thousands of them. And that's going to be the case going forward. And there are a number of alternatives to play with. And that's the beauty of technology. And like you say, if you collapse that time to value for building something, then why shouldn't you try this on your own? Why shouldn't you say, for my use case, what I want it to do, I don't need all of OpenClaw. I don't need it to work with 3,000 connectors and all that. I just have one use case that I want it to do. You could, I think, in very little time and with some degree of confidence, build something yourself. So I would build it. I would build it myself. I really would. I would just rook up with my favorite, agentic CLI, whatever that is. Let's say Vibe from Mistral, for example. It doesn't have to be Codex or Claude CLI. And I would just learn how to build an agentic plane, a control plane, an agentic control plane, because that's a fascinating area just to dig into, like you and I were talking about, with how you manage memory, how you build in connectivity to different sources of information and take action in different modalities. That's fascinating.
I think that's one of the things that, perspective is worth 80 IQ points, as Alan Kay, the Apple fellow, used to say. I don't know who discovered water, but it wasn't a fish, right? It goes way back. Anyway, when you and I approach it, like I'm sure a lot of people do, which is, I not only want that tool, but I want to understand it, and I want to understand what it takes to do it. And you mentioned agent control planes and things like that, and I have this concept of observability-native, and I'm already like in the stuff that I'm doing. Like, okay, so I'm going to go like build my own version of this and see how I would do it, right, or what you could do, or what some of the constraints are, or you taking it the next level. Not that I'm going to contribute it all back to try to become the next OpenClaw famous developer. Maybe I would, but I'm really
Some people
doing it
might
for my
want
own
to, yeah.
learning and experimentation, right? So there's that whole wanting to know, what could I do? How would it work? There's that part of it. Well, you're a general everyday user. I mean, I think you're going to talk about, and then one of the segments of sort of like the easier, the OpenClaw for Dummies version, not to disrespect anything, but if you know what I mean.
Well, that's what Peter
the
wanted to
innovation,
build, right? He wanted to build something that his mom could use. That was his idea.
Yep. Yeah, I'm very much of the, do I just like plow down and go do an OpenClaw instance, or like do I keep doing what I'm doing? And I keep doing what I'm doing, which is building it myself, because I rebuild it multiple times. And one of the reasons why I do that isn't that I'm not happy with it, is how I built it to today. If I use today as the example, and 6 months ago is a much different process using the same tool. It's just new generations of them, right? Whether it's Anthropic or OpenAI, Codex or Gemini, is the ability and the things we've learned about doing plans and things like that, and how to better instruct, control the memory of these systems, of these tools. It's doing it today is much different experience than even 6 months ago. It's odd to say that, but it is true.
Well, it is, because like 6 months ago, if I spent the weekend building a tool to do something like just drill down into fractals, because we all have done that.
Because
I want to fly through the fractal in real time. That's what I want. But in the past, if I had concluded, after 2 days of work, that, wow, that really wasn't the greatest approach that I took to building this tool, I would never have thrown it out. I would have been like, let's just keep working our way toward getting what I want with what we have. And that collapse of time to value with agentic, code generation, what is the loss? Just time and tokens at this point. And that is increasingly a shrinking, asset in terms of cost and time. So I would just redo it.
Yeah, to your point, my experience, yours probably too, is when you redo it, you can do it faster the second time, the third time, the fourth time, not because you just know it better, you know what you want better. Yes, that's a big factor. But the tools have changed. I mean, I'm not sitting here arguing with whatever model about, no, that's not right. That's not correct. That's not what I was describing, or you didn't do what I asked you to do. You know, you're not dealing with the same level of things of, yeah, you keep coding the wrong error, fixing the error that you keep breaking, or breaking what you fix.
Those
things
sorry,
go
Mitch.
away.
Which AI are you using? Because that still happens to me.
Well, no, you really want to know? Okay, no. So I've right now I'm doing my development in Claude. I mean, that's what I'm using at the moment, and I think it's 4.6 extended or whatever it is. The thing kills. It's just like, wow.
Yeah.
It cranks, and there are some really good things about Codex and Gemini and what they do as well. It just kind of, the ball that moves around a little bit. It's like fluid in a jar. You just keep shaking up, and this one's at the top now. But that's what I did, is I wanted to see, like, okay, what's the state of this? It's been a few months since I've done anything with it. And I was like, ooh.
Yeah, you got to get to know it. You have to learn the ins and outs. You have to, It's just like dating back in high school, college days, You need to get to spend time to get to know somebody.
College? Okay, I was doing computers. But all right. No,
I'm told.
No, I dated in high school, college, but yes, okay. Not to jump on the stereotype, but it's a stereotype.
For a reason, yeah.
For
actually, that makes me think about calling out old acquaintances, and you and I forgot when we started today's podcast, because we're so enamored with Peter and Sam's getting to know one another that we forgot to do our new segment on the call out, which, by the way, if those of you, we went under the shark. It's not two words, it's one word. To call out, like in text, to call attention to something. Do you mind? Let's stop and do it before we forget. Move on.
Yes,
move on to the next
apologies
thing.
to our audience. I vibe coded my way right past the call out. So let's back up here. It's time for the call out.
Yeah, this is live. Yeah.
There you go. Go for it, Brad. Call out.
So mine is a surprise for me. I took a briefing from a company called Quest Software, which is a bit of a large company, global company that has quite a history. And they are very much interested in what you and I were just talking about with, what is the gravity of data? What does that look like going forward in an agentic era? And so they just are getting ready to, by the time this goes live, it will have gone out, this new solution from them called the Trusted Data Management Platform, which you're like, yeah, there are a ton of those. And yes, there are. I actually am going to be publishing a new Signal report on said data intelligence platforms in just a couple of weeks. But what's interesting about this is they're really focusing on creating what they call an automated data product factory. So we've heard about AI factories, and this is a data product factory, which everyone that's a data practitioner or knows one will have seen them or have lamented themselves the fact that how difficult it is to create data products, even though it is a grail, that is something we all want. But push comes to shove, you're like, oh my gosh, just get them access, get them something that works, and let's call it a day, and we'll come back to that problem later. But so if you can build data products, especially if you can tag on SLAs and, let's say, contracts to say, that it's going to do this and that, and this is what it represents, and those are important things to business. That's what Quest is really shooting for here, which I find very laudable, and I wish them luck with this. It looks, from the short intro I've seen to it and demo, it looks like it's a very solid step in that direction, and something that will alleviate a lot of pain for DBAs in particular, and any data practitioner, frankly.
Excellent.
What about you?
excited
What's
to
your
see
call
that.
out this week?
Yeah. I actually have two, and both actually do come from briefings as well. And some I can talk about, some I can't quite yet. But, two of the really interesting, and actually I had three really interesting, between IBM and Red Hat and GitLab. And you talk about different companies at different stages of their development. Of course, Red Hat's part of IBM, but they still kind of operate.
They are Red Hat.
Product-wise, on their own on their own flow, if you will. But what the trend that I think is happening is, we're all enamored with chips, and then we're enamored with data centers, and then we're enamored with all the stuff that it takes to run a data center. And then eventually we kind of get to, oh yeah, we need to run things on this, right? What are we going to put on this
What are we going to use this for?
Oh yeah, back to software. What was that again? Let's think about that a minute. And I sort of jumped my own project here because I talked about the agent control framework, plane control framework that I'm working on, that I will get to you to review. But I jumped it ahead of it and said, no, I'm going to do this idea of observability-native first. And the concept is native, meaning its observability is built into the whole stack from the beginning, whether it's development or what you're deploying operations in your code, everywhere in the stack. Because in a world where everything can change because of agentic and processes and AI, and any part of that stack can be replaced at any time, and the non-deterministic nature of generative AI, watching telemetry at the end of the trail, the river's been polluted by the time it gets to you. Your chances of stopping something just decrease dramatically, right?
But you may have figured out what happened. To prevent it from
You're
happening.
playing detective for something you may not have any data for.
Like a crime that will never be recommitted.
Exactly. Yeah. That repo got blown away and it's already something else, right? So, and it's not to be, too overly optimistic about it, but I think we're at a point where actually we can build in telemetry and observability in everything as it's being built. And that's what you see vendors stepping up to try to do to get earlier in the development lifecycle, whether it's a Dynatrace or Harness or Red Hat and IBM and GitLab. They're all figuring out how to be part of the whole ecosystem, not just the slice that they've figured out they want to be part of, they want to own. Yeah, they still want to own that, but they know they've got to participate in the full life cycle. And so just a kudos to those companies, all of them that I've mentioned, who are really thinking aggressively about AI, not just hop on the latest, OpenClaw bandwagon or vibe coding bandwagon, but to really think about how do they rethink their product strategies and reshape it so they are part of how software gets created, how it gets tested, and how it gets deployed, how it gets designed and thought of, because that loop is going, and pretty soon, if you're not in it, it's too late. It happens too fast. It's too late for you to get part of it because it's already come up with another way of doing it. So I think they're doing it out of necessity, but also out of opportunity. So lots of call outs there. But I thought you definitely expect a trend, and now it's happening. It's like interesting to see it come together.
Do you think, Mitch, that this, because I love that idea of innate observability, and even with like OpenClaw, for instance, Peter built into that this observability where every single transaction gets documented. So you can replay what went wrong later on, or at least understand it. And I think you could use that to understand what's happening as it's happening, as you said, in the stream. But do you think that if every piece of software that gets built and gets conjoined within this, control plane, will need the control plane to be sort of a like with catalogs, you have a catalog of catalogs idea. Will we have a control plane of control planes wherein every component is transcribing what it's doing to be documentable? But then that harness, not just harness, sorry, that control plane itself is the master of that. Do we need that?
I think that's one logical line of thought. And I was thinking that way for a while. And I thought, you know what? In our world, there is no one product that dominates a company in large companies. They have everything, right? So they're not going to sign up for, name it, Microsoft to control everything, or Dynatrace to control everything, or OpenAI to control everything. Even if they wanted to, just like everything else. We are an Oracle shop. Well, we just bought this company. Now we're not. We're Microsoft and an Oracle shop, right?
We're a little less Oracle today.
We're just squeezed it a little bit, maybe a lot, depending on how much you bought. So I think the world we have to anticipate and expect is a control plane of control planes, a multi-dimensional, as it's called. This is the multiverse of control planes, if you will, essentially. Which may sound like chaos, but on the other hand, that's the world we're ending up in. I think that's unavoidable. So now, how do control planes talk with each other, and how do they each operate within their own domain? And then when they intersect, either intersecting in a good way or intersecting conflicting way, how does that get resolved? And I think the reason why that's possible to do now is everything doesn't have to be monitored after it's already been built and done. You can have observability happening in the system, of the system, by the system, by external agents, whatever it is, and be able to direct what's happening while it's happening. Let's say an agent, makes a call to an LLM and gets a wacky answer, but the guardrail didn't catch it. But you have an observability guardrail that will also tell you something wacky happened. Let's redirect that agent for a moment, have it do something different, or have it apply another agent, check its work, or whatever the response is.
Yeah.
So it's a much more of an organic kind of live system, as opposed to a linear, this happens, and then we catch these things at these point in time. The river doesn't flow one direction anymore. It flows all directions with, I think, the world we're going to.
Wait, isn't that a flood?
Yes. Yeah. It's called a tsunami. Or a mudslide in California, whatever you want to call it.
But it's okay, because then you're not going to hit yourself on rocks. You have room to swim.
Yeah, I didn't say it would be easy, but and so it's not like that's not happening tomorrow. But it seems to me, whenever I think this is going to be the thing that wins, it doesn't usually happen. That's pretty rare for a thing to win. Even in the mobile world, there's still Android and iOS. There's still two of them, right? And there's, the chances of one of them truly, really dominating isn't going to happen, I don't think. Could happen. Maybe if Tim Cook gets elected president, then we'll have iOS on everything.
Right. I mean, Linux dominates.
Well, that's the choice of the people. That's the people.
and everyone who's building servers and mobile operating systems and Chrome OS and every other OS, it seems, except one. It is like a multi-technological landscape, where you have to be adaptive and you have to strive toward building software that, as you just described so eloquently, is able to see itself, to have some internal reflection, like I rarely do myself as a human, but as I strive to do.
Self-aware.
Right. To be able to say, maybe if I did this, I might be better off. Let's try it.
So when we evaluate software in the future, we'll be evaluating a lot the things we do now, plus the EQ, emotional quotient. What's the emotional
That's right.
quotient?
It'll be free association on the couch for your software. Yes. How does that make you feel, Mitch?
That's all good.
So we should.
Back when I was a young boy, no, that's a whole nother problem. But
oh dear, yeah, that sounds dangerous.
Different kind of podcast.
Indeed, but
anyway,
we should do our last segment before we go. Because since we changed our order around so much, we might as well keep
disk
going
is
down
filling
that.
up. So all right, so time for the drop.
Okay, it's time for the drop.
Alrighty, I don't remember if I went first last time. I'll jump first time and then you can jump in. So I mentioned I have a couple things coming out, the agent control plane framework, and then also the observability-native ideas. And I'm excited to share that, not just to get it out the door, but also get some real tests of it and people to say, this is crap, this makes sense, make it better this way, we like this, whatever. But my hope is to make what we work on, Brad, as something that people can look at, use as a guide or as a framework for testing and evaluating what's happening in the market right now, using the frame of what we know as analysts and also our own background and experience. So that's a big one. And then kind of the other one is just March is right around the corner and I start traveling again. I haven't traveled too much. So I'm
same
getting
here.
back out getting the band back together. Like, okay, what do I have to have in my suitcase again? What do I have to be ready for to leave at a moment's notice? So
You'll figure it out once you get there. Don't worry, Mitch. It'll be okay.
it'll happen. It's like riding a bike. I'll fall right back into it. So anyway, so that's my drop. How about yours?
Yeah, same here for the travel. Looking forward to that. It's nice to see colleagues and to work with the vendors that we get to spend time with. I feel very fortunate in being able to share in their everything they share with us and the knowledge they have to impart is wow. But yeah, so weekend project. You know how I have said I will not do OpenClaw just because I don't have the time or energy to put into doing it right and doing it in a way that I feel confident that it's the security is set up, that I could trust it. However, that said, I want to try this with an alternative. I mentioned this a couple times today. That I want to play with one of those alternatives, and the one I'm looking at right now is called Nanobot, which comes out of a Hong Kong university. And the reason is twofold. First is it's written in Python, like 98%. So I like Python. I feel comfortable reading Python much more than TypeScript because, as you know, we've talked about, I hate semicolons. But the point is this is the second part is it's only like 4,000 lines of code. It does, it's not as aggressive as OpenClaw in terms of its scope that it wants to accomplish, but it does the same thing. It's the same kind of agentic system, but it's 4,000 lines of code. And I think I could get my head around that a little bit better than I could with the like 430,000 lines that OpenClaw is sitting at right now. Woo!
Nanobot's not going to start its own religion or create a political party.
Well, unfortunately,
communist Chinese or whatever.
Right. We should not kid ourselves. Every model you interact with, every software that you use has a perspective, and it came from someone or some group of people, and they have their agendas and objectives.
Yep.
So always understand who you're dating. It's the important thing here. but
choose your friends wisely.
You do, and so I'm choosing Nanobot very carefully from that regard. And it's interesting because it actually has built in the ability to participate in the what was it called, Moltbook, social media, social network. The Reddit for these Claude bots,
and
the oh my goodness,
of OpenClaw.
yes. Let them date one another. I'm fine with that. Yeah. So that's my drop. Is I'm looking forward to standing that up on a nice UTM container on my spare computer, little Mac Mini, and let it go.
Because God forbid you can't get one for 3 weeks right now.
No, the wait lists. Yes.
Yeah. Everybody's digging out their old Intel-based Mac Mini. It's like, I could do it on this, but anyway, whole nother thing. Well, cool. Well, good. Hey, kudos on, we had our first guest last time joining us, and we appreciated having folks here, and we hope that others will consider being a part of our broadcast, part of our podcast here. So if you're interested, reach out to us at agentsofdev@futurumgroup.com. And of course, check out our research on the futurumgroup.com website. And we thank you very much for listening and following and just tolerating maybe some of the points here and there too, and just going along with us for the ride. It's been a lot of fun. And it's a lot of fun because I'm doing it with you, Brad. So thanks for being part of it too.
As our producer Corey just reminded me, we're definitely going places. We will be back with an episode we might call Agents After Dark, given the topics that we've been talking about on this one. So Thank you all for joining us on this crazy journey. We love having you here.
We may have to start rating our episodes. So okay,
that's right. NC-17. Yes.
M. All right. Take care, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Control, this is Agent Dev. I'm in position.
Copy that, Dev. Stand by for go.
Standing by.
Hey everyone, it's Alan Shimmin, founder, CEO here at Techstrong, and welcome to our continuing series on AI, agentic AI, the future, here with the Microsoft team and our Futurum analyst team, as well as Techstrong. In this next episode, though, we're going to be joined by Mitchell Ashley of Futurum, who leads the software development lifecycle and building segment at Futurum. And Mitchell is talking with Brian Good, whose official titles is Corporate Vice President and Agents Marketing. But Brian is really here talking about agent apps and chat. And it's obviously a very hot topic as we move to an agentic AI workflow-based basis. So let's join Mitchell and Brian here with me, and it's great to have them both.
My name is Mitch Ashley, and I'm VP and Practice Lead of the Software Lifecycle Engineering Practice at Futurum Research.
And Mitch, my name is Brian Good. I lead the Business Applications and Agents team here at Microsoft.
Let's start here. 2025 is described as kind of an inflection point for AI adoption. What do you think are the most significant changes that you've seen in organizations as they're using AI and agents in their businesses this year?
Well, I absolutely agree. 2025 is really an inflection point, and we'll sometimes describe it as the year that the frontier firm was born. And you might have heard us talk about the frontier firm before. It's this idea of companies that are putting AI really at the heart of their business, and it's enabling them to do things like reinvent the way they engage with customers or transform their business processes inside their company. And beyond. And it's really the year these frontier firms are sort of rising up, and a time when I think we can learn a lot from these early adopters and understanding how they're deploying AI, how they're being successful, and then figure out how we can take those insights and bring them to our own businesses. That's where you can have outsized impact.
As AI transforms those functions, what do you see as the new patterns of work that's enabled by Copilot and agents as customers start leveraging the technology for productivity or innovation?
I'll tell you what, I have studied these frontier firms as they come up, and there's really three patterns that I see across these frontier firms. The first is really enabling employee productivity. So they give every employee an AI assistant like Microsoft 365 Copilot, and it helps those employees be more productive. The second pattern that I see is really these frontier firms deploying AI to automate existing business processes. So, for example, they already have a way of handling expense reports, but they can use AI to speed that up and reduce costs. And that certainly results in some benefits to the customer. The third pattern is really where a customer starts from the beginning, let's say from first principles, and they reimagine a function altogether. They'll reimagine what it means to engage with a customer who has an issue with their product, and they'll put agents at the heart of that. Most companies can only take on one or two of these functional transformation projects at any given time because it's a big lift. Again, it's reimagining a function from first principles. It's not just taking existing processes and applying AI to them.
How far along do you think most organizations are in their adoption cycle for generative AI?
Well, I think we're still in early innings. There's no doubt about that. Customers are starting to deploy AI in different functions, as we talked about, but certainly they haven't, in most cases, fully realized kind of the transformation that AI can have across their organization. So it's still very early innings. But I'd say we see very promising signs and green shoots of that adoption and success. Again, the key really here is to start function by function. Think about a particular function. Think about peeling it back to the business processes you need to go focus on. That's where you can have outsized impact.
How do you define agentic business applications, and why are they critical for organizations?
Yeah. Well, I do have a vision that there's the application of old is really transformed with AI. And we call that new type of application the agentic business application. And the agentic biz app includes the assistant for the human to start to use. It includes pre-built business process agents that basically take the drudgery out of work. And then it's built on a data foundation. And so instead of being limited just to the data that, maybe is in the CRM system or the ERP system, it joins that with data from other lines of business systems and even productivity data, so that you have a rich set of data that you can build agents on top of, and you can empower your humans to get better decisions from. And so this idea that brings all those together, the assistant, the agent, the application, I call the Agentic Biz App, and I think it's a really big idea.
Let's talk about why you're optimistic about the future of agentic business applications.
I have a lot of optimism here because, number one, I see customers already deploying these applications and really transforming their business. So I already see people starting to get great benefit from it. But at a more human level, the thing that gets me excited is, like, if you think about every one of our jobs, like, there's a lot of stuff that we end up having to do that really isn't adding joy to our lives. Me doing an expense report, or, filling out a CRM system, with an update from a customer call. Those aren't the things that make us unique. Those aren't the things that bring joy. Those aren't really even things that add business value collectively. But if we can delegate those things to AI and agents, I think we'll enable ourselves to actually go do far bigger things and really take our ambition to the next level. And so I am absolutely excited for what the future holds.
I'd love to hear about how you see the role of AI agents evolving just over the next few years, especially as organizations start to redesign core business processes, drive outcomes for efficiency. How do you see this taking shape?
Yeah, great question. I would say that we really believe there's a spectrum of agents. There will be very simple agents that someone will use that might just be grounded on a particular knowledge source and help you, understand, what might happen from that knowledge source. Then there'll be task-based agents, and then there'll also be more sophisticated, fully autonomous agents as well. And this more autonomous agents is where you can unlock a lot of business value. These are agents that aren't called by a human. They're just running independently. They're triggered based on different actions. And they can really automate business processes, in some cases from start to finish. So we believe there's this spectrum of agents. And today, I'd say most agentic use cases start with those more simple kind of knowledge agents. But increasingly, we're seeing customers bring in these task-based agents and autonomous agents to automate things end to end.
How about the C-suite leaders? How should they be thinking about investing in agentic technologies for long-term value?
Well, every C-suite leader I talk to today is already in on AI. Like, every one of them recognizes that it's a competitive advantage if they can move quickly. And if they don't move quickly, they recognize it could be a disruptive force in their industry. But let's face it, AI, it's transforming businesses, it's transforming functions, it's going to reshape entire industries. And every C-suite leader I talk to recognizes that and wants on board. What they're looking for, though, is a partner. They're looking for the tech, of course. They want to make sure they've got the right tech, but they're also looking for a partner to help them shape this in their business. And that's where Microsoft, I think, comes into play. We're not a large-scale model maker, but we do take the best of the models and bring them into the workplace so that companies can use them.
We're talking about AI being a disruptive technology, probably because it seems that it really can and will affect every part of our work, our lives, et cetera. Certainly is affecting how we create software with new concepts like agents and agentic AI. Curious about your thoughts. Share with us, how does Microsoft view what the transformation is going to be like with AI really having an impact and a big benefit to businesses?
Yeah, many industry pundits will say that this move to AI agents is going to lead to the rise of more consumption-like models or outcome-based pricing. And I think they're right. That's definitely a direction that I see the world shifting as well. The only thing I would balance that with is that many customers are still most comfortable buying things on a per user or per seat basis. And so the approach I'm taking is, how do I enable customers to buy offerings that they're comfortable with? And that's typically like a per user or some type of per tenant type of license, while giving them the flexibility to grow and shift into more consumption models as their business changes. And so we are at an inflection point, just as we said. And I think one of the things that will change is the business model over time.
Talk some more about agentic. When you think about agents operating on their own or more autonomously, and why is that an important thing that organizations are looking to move to?
Yeah, it really comes down to business priorities. Like every business leader I talk to wants to find ways to grow their top line revenue, or they're looking for ways to automate things that they're doing so that they can save money or redirect folks to focus on more important activities. And, autonomous agents really fit that bill. Imagine in the sales context, you can have an autonomous agent, going through marketing leads and qualifying them before handing them off to a human seller. That's work that wouldn't have gotten done in the past or would have been done by a human seller and have been relatively low value, not something they really enjoyed about their job. And so an AI agent can do that and add great value to the company, and again, help that company grow on the top line.
Talk about Microsoft and the offering that you have in the context of an end-to-end toolkit, if you will,
Yeah.
for functional transformation.
As far as the toolkit goes, we really believe that there's three essential parts to it. The first is we think every employee should have an AI assistant. In our case, that's Microsoft 365 Copilot. Think of that as a productivity tool to help every employee get through their workday and get more done. It can be quite transformative. That next step up is where agents come into the picture. And I describe agents as really being for every business process or workflow in an organization. And we have a toolkit that enables customers to build their own agents. It starts with Copilot Studio, but even extends into our Azure capabilities with our Azure AI Foundry product. So agents pair very nicely with that Copilot that I described first. And then the final step is where the system of record becomes the system of action. And we'll sometimes call this the agentic business application, where you take a CRM system and you add agents and an assistant to it to really transform. Those three are the essential ingredients or building blocks for AI transformation in a frontier firm or any business at this point.
That's a great term. Can you share some examples of how Microsoft customers are already seeing measurable impact from adopting agentic business applications?
Yeah. One example I think I can give is Lifetime. They're a great customer of ours based here in the United States. They've used us as part of their finance and supply chain operations, and they've deployed agents to basically speed up how they handle and process e-commerce orders. In fact, I think it saved them 95% in terms of their e-commerce order efficiency by deploying AI agents and agentic business applications to solve that problem. So I think that's a great example. We also have another great example from Europe, a large utility named Eneco, who deployed a multi-language AI agent for their customers to help them scale and address customer questions. It's a pretty cool solution, saves them time, and again, helps them scale up. Now, it's a really exciting time in the world of agents.
You talked about the C-suite and kind of the three phases in this adoption curve as we adopt AI. What kind of recommendations do you have of like how to get started? Well, maybe near some of the near-term activities.
Well, as I said earlier, I think AI is going to transform every company, every function, every industry, and that opportunity is so vast, sometimes it's hard to know where to get started. And I've got two bits of advice really there to anybody that is pondering that question. The first thing is, again, start with a function. Pick a function that you want to go after and then peel it like an onion. Go look at the next layer, which are the business processes in that function that you can apply a copilot or agents to really transform. The other thing though is like, don't get into analysis paralysis. Just pick a business process. Just go pick a business process to get started with. And as you learn from applying AI to that business process, whatever it is, whatever your thorniest business process is, go apply AI to it. You are going to learn. Your organization's going to learn. Your culture will adapt. And then it will flow from there. So the opportunity is so vast. Don't let that keep you from getting started. You got to get started, start simple, pick one thing, and go from there.
So as we move to an agentic business environment, let's talk about the people. How do you see the role of human creativity, judgment, leadership? How is that going to evolve?
Yeah, well, that's an excellent question. And one of the things that we'll often talk about is how AI and frontier firms is going to transform the way we work. It's going to change the org chart into more of a work chart. We sometimes talk about frontier firms taking on the Hollywood model, where individuals will swarm around a problem, like focus on a problem, and then disband. Once they've got a solution. And so it's absolutely going to change the way we work with others inside the workplace. It also, I think, is going to give rise to a new idea that we call an agent boss. And you can imagine, just as a people manager today might take work and delegate it to different humans on their team, resolve conflicts and sort of manage performance. Every one of us in the future is going to do that, but not just with humans, but also with agents. So imagine taking a business problem, breaking it up into pieces, delegating it to agents or agents on your team, resolving conflicts that might come up, applying human judgment. It's going to be an absolutely transformational moment. And I'm really excited about it. I really believe that, there is still a huge opportunity for humans with human ambition to go do great work, amplified by AI.
Talk a little bit about how you see the difference in the working together between applications, assistants, agents, the different technologies.
Well, that's an excellent question. And we really have this complete toolkit that spans everything from the assistant to the agent to the application. And I think those three things work together in a symbiotic way. As an example, you can imagine that I might go to my assistant and, ask a simple question, my AI assistant like Microsoft 365 Copilot, and ask a question about, summarize the emails or help me respond to the emails I've got. Or I might use an agent to update a CRM record after I meet with a customer. But I'm still going to want to go to an application, really, that's a purpose-built experience for me if I want a more specialized or fine-tuned experience. So those three things really work together.
Talk a little bit about the industries or maybe the business functions that you expect to see reshaped first by agentic AI transformation.
Yeah, there are three or four, I'd say, functions in particular that are, I'd say, ground zero for functional transformation with AI and agents. Certainly, customer service and customer experience is one that is absolutely being reshaped, and I'd say a very early adopter of AI, no doubt about it. Another where I'm seeing a lot of early AI adoption is in sales. And it's just because, just as we talked about, there's a big opportunity to use AI to basically increase capacity for that organization to grow top line revenue. So the business impact there is undeniable. But I also see it in places like finance and supply chain, where you can use AI to shorten the time it takes from an order to actually being able to ship it that order. We're seeing people use AI to improve accounts payable and accounts receivable. So we're seeing some pretty interesting impacts there.
Let's talk a little bit more about the frontier firms. They're not just adopting technology, they're also changing the way they're doing business around AI agents and Copilot capabilities. Can you talk about what they're doing to invest and support the short-term ROI that they're looking to get for long-term innovation?
The most successful frontier firms are doing actually is taking a functional approach. And so certainly they'll think about their entire company, but they'll really take an approach that's function by function. They'll think about their sales function as an example, and then they'll peel back the onion a little bit and understand which processes inside their sales department they can automate using AI agents as an example. They'll look at which things their salespeople need help with, where you could pair up an assistant like Copilot to help them throughout their workday. And they'll even look at how they can bring agents in to really augment business capacity, maybe to grow top line revenue or take out costs. But starting function by function has really been the recipe that these frontier firms are using to see success. As an example, in our sales organization, by deploying Copilot and agents, we've been able to improve revenue per seller, in some cases by almost 10% in some organizations. And if you think about that, giving a seller 10% more capacity is like giving them an additional month in a year without actually having them spend any extra hours through the work week. And so there's some pretty remarkable results. That's just sales. We've been able to do the same in customer service, in our finance department, in our IT department. Our legal team has been able to reduce costs by 5% by deploying AI and agents within their functions.
How do we ensure trust and transparency as agentic systems become more and more autonomous?
Yeah. Well, there's two things that we want to do to help with trust and transparency. The first is we have a rigorous set of principles on responsible AI. So for any AI that Microsoft deploys, we adhere to an important set of guidelines, and that's really table stakes. So that's the first piece, responsible AI and our focus there. The second thing that I think is important is we now have an opportunity to start to quantify the value and the impact that many agents will have. And we often will call that in the industry, we'll call that evals or benchmarks. And increasingly, I think we have an opportunity to help our customers understand how agents are being effective in their workplace using these evals and benchmarks on real world problems. So for example, a typical workflow will be a sales leader doing sales research to try to understand like how they might want to organize accounts or territories or, reshape planning as they think about the year ahead. We recently released a new benchmark that we call the Sales Research Bench, and it shows how agents can actually help sales leaders in that very specific job, and it's quantified. And so I think you'll start to see more of that. And between following responsible AI standards and then using quantitative measures like evals and benchmarks to understand efficacy, I think we're really on the cusp of helping customers know how they can deploy AI in a safe way for real business results.
Well, thank you, Brian, for sharing with us your insights and kind of look into the future. What's happening with agentic business applications?
Thank you very much.
It's really amazing the pace at which AI has been adopted and continues to evolve. The technology evolves on a near daily basis. But at the same time, organizations have to figure out how they're going to implement their AI strategies and what the business outcomes that they're most important to their business. I think it's very fascinating how Microsoft has approached the market, both from the standpoint of addressing the individual and their productivity, but also thinking about new workflows, new models of business, but doing that with not a set of tools, but a set of capabilities that provide integration with data, process, workflow, and agentic AI. No one knows for sure what the future holds and what an agentic business might really, really look like. But in situations like today, when we remove constraints of what we can do with technology thanks to AI, that's where the possibilities are created. Using tools like Copilot, using applications like Dynamics 365. And we'll see what end users as well as technologists bring to bear in their ideas and how they reshape businesses for today and tomorrow. I don't know about you, but I'm super excited about the future that we're creating together, thanks to working with technology companies and with end users like yourself.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining. I'm Brendan Burke, Research Director at the Futurum Group, covering semiconductors, supply chain, and emerging tech. And I want to set the stage for how the industry is going to evolve over the coming year. To do that, I'm going to zoom out first on the state of the industry and then dive deep into how I think the latest innovations are going to play out in the coming year. And we're meeting at a remarkable moment for the semiconductor industry. After 2 consecutive breakout years, the industry is on pace to approach $1 trillion in annual revenue in 2026. This growth is historic, but it hasn't come easily. Each of the past few years has had its own existential questions for the industry, and the stakes have always felt very high because of the increasing importance of the semiconductor industry in the overall economy. But if we look back over each of the past years, there's been one bottleneck or one issue that's faced the industry and threatened to slow down progress. In the past few years, we've worried about extreme supply constraints, geopolitical risk, the availability of raw materials, the pace of fab build-out, and even sometimes if there was enough demand for the most evolutionary technology in history. But more recently, concerns have shifted towards delays with latest generation of servers, the availability of power for these servers, and the memory constraints facing AI systems. And yet, over the past 3 years, the industry has pushed through these bottlenecks, and it's done so by driving efficiency in the supply chain, by making aggressive design choices that get ahead of user requirements, and developing new techniques around packaging, system-level design, and long-term capacity planning that ultimately prepare for bottlenecks before they affect the industry. And what's becoming clear as we head into 2026 is that semiconductors are no longer reacting to cyclical constraints. They are anticipating them. Leaders have planned ahead, driven efficiencies across fabrication, memory, packaging, and power, and position themselves to benefit even as downstream pressure increases for smaller players. So today I want to take a step back and ask a simple question. What problems are still going to matter by the end of 2026 and which ones won't? Right now, the dominant concerns are memory limitations and energy availability. AI systems are extraordinarily memory hungry, and global power infrastructure is struggling to keep pace with demand from data centers. At the same time, recent model launches and performance breakthroughs are only accelerating the ambition of frontier labs with longer agentic sessions, more complex reasoning, and larger training runs aimed at the next frontier of scientific AI models. And so that puts the industry head to head with a memory wall, whether the memory capacity on chips can scale fast enough to keep up with the size of training runs. Yet that brings us to the real shift in how AI is going to be used and how the software community is going to adapt models to the latest hardware that determine whether this memory wall will be an impediment for the industry or just a bump in the road. And overall, what we're going to see this year in AI that affects the semiconductor roadmap is a shift from subscription chatbots to agentic systems that perform real-world work, systems that generate value comparable to human employees. That transition fundamentally changes what we need from semiconductors, not just more compute, but more efficient compute and more sustainability in terms of the business model and the efficiency of our AI systems. And so my core prediction for the coming year is that 2026 will be defined by 10 to 20 times improvements in tokens per dollar per watt. We're going to see measurable gains in system efficiency, new architectures in AI that are optimized for long-running agentic workloads, and a smarter use of memory and storage to scale token generation within tight power envelopes. So by the end of the year, I believe that we're not going to be talking about a memory shortage anymore, and energy constraints will start to ease as we add in new power generation capacity and utilize existing data centers better. And that might sound misaligned with the skyrocketing prices we're seeing for memory right now. So today I want to talk through why I think that the industry is overcoming the memory wall, what key metrics are already telling us, and what semiconductors have to deliver to support long-running stateful AI agents without hitting out-of-memory errors. So there's a few predictions that support the overall growth and efficiency that I think we're going to see in the real world this year. First, that existing server designs and software improvements will allow for significant real-world gains within cloud environments for higher utilization in both agentic reasoning as well as large-scale training that uses reinforcement learning environments. Second, that the real constraint we're going to be talking about throughout this year is going to be scale up within the rack and between racks, and how much throughput we can deliver at cluster scale. I think a major constraint we're going to hear about this year is the performance, reliability, and supply chain around photonic computing specifically to improve the networking that we get both within the rack and between racks. Third, the supply chain diversification is going to support more aggressive semiconductor roadmaps to specialize silicon and then take advantage of the latest foundry capabilities. And fourth, that CPUs and DPUs for reinforcement learning and agentic tasks will play a key role in improving tokens per watt along with the GPU roadmap. So first, I want to start with the available systems that we have on the market today and what those are going to do for system efficiency. As I mentioned, I think that the platforms that are coming on the market this year are ready to give us 10 to 20 times real-world gains in tokens per dollars per watt within cloud environments. So that will actually be experienced by customers, not just in a lab, but actually in the amount of tokens that customers are able to generate. And the amount of concurrency that they're able to deliver to wide groups of users for agentic experiences. So just recently, Jensen from NVIDIA and Lisa from AMD have driven home that the next generation of servers are going to have 2 to 3 times more memory capacity and memory bandwidth. And it goes to the question of whether this is going to be enough, whether we have the memory we need to actually deliver on the promise of AI. And fundamentally, what these leaders have recognized is that agents need state in order to perform on long-running tasks. When an agent spends 3 hours researching a market report or updating a code base, it has to remember a plan, the results of prior tool calls, and the original intent of the user. This short-term memory is stored in the KV cache in the GPU's high bandwidth memory. And as reasoning depth grows, that cache explodes. Fetching that history over and over requires massive memory bandwidth. And the problem to date with creating agentic products and using GPUs for AI agents is that GPUs spend more than half their time doing nothing when running an agentic workload. And we see that in independent academic testing that idle periods can be up to 55% of total execution time for an agentic task. And so we have cloud users as well as application builders that are paying to access a sports car and then leaving it in a parking lot for half the time that they're in a race. And to build sustainable AI agents, we've got to eliminate that idle waste and use hardware, software, and networking together to drive additional efficiency. And I think key drivers of the improvement in GPU utilization for agentic workloads is going to come from some of the latest innovations we've seen in both NVIDIA's Blackwell platform and the upcoming Rubin launch scheduled for the end of this coming year. Because I think a major constraint in agentic deployment over the past year in 2025 is that many hyperscalers and builders were running inference workloads on infrastructure that was originally designed for training and not necessarily for agentic inference. We still have large existing fleets of Ampere GPUs from 3 generations ago, Hopper deployments, and overall systems that were optimized for flop output and not necessarily for high throughput inference. As a result, we tried to change over the software to make better utilization of these clusters, but didn't necessarily get the performance out of them that we wanted, because inference isn't necessarily about pure flop output. It's about hitting the KV cache and accessing the tokens needed to respond to a user request. It's about token by token memory access. And then, also improving on latency sensitive memory traffic. And Ampere and Hopper systems have been widely used, but we've started using Blackwell for large scale training runs. And when they change over to running inference, we're going to get a lot of benefits based on the new generation of architecture. Hoppers, have been great for transformer engine optimizations and training mixture of experts models, but have been limited in the high bandwidth memory capacity for each GPU. We've seen that memory bandwidth was insufficient for large context, and that often these clusters sat idle. And so it's not a problem with the hardware. It's just that there's a mismatch between the actual productization of AI and the compute that was put in place for it. But just over the past half of the year, Blackwell Ultra has started rolling out at scale. And what's clear from the specifications and the way that customers want to use these systems is that the HBM available in these systems is going to be the key to efficient inference. Because of the design of Blackwell, we're going to see, once these systems are put in place and applications are integrated with the systems, that token latency is going to drop, and we're going to get better tokens per dollars per watt. And I think this is going to be proof that inference is a memory problem, and that systems with faster access to large pools of memory can perform much better on high-speed reasoning tasks than their predecessors. And I think there's been real limits to using the latest hardware for agentic applications over the past year. Hyperscalers have been limited by the hardware they've already used. There have been significant crashes from the prior generations of hardware when attempting to run trillion parameter models with reasoning capabilities. It's clear that new hardware is needed to deliver things like multi-hour agentic sessions concurrently to large groups of users. And also to create a business model around those experiences based on the reliability and performance of those things like coding agents or long-running scientific research processes. And because of the deployment of Blackwell this coming year, I think we're going to start seeing those improvements start to play out in the real world, not just in a lab or in testing, but actually in how customers experience it, the number of tokens available to them, and ultimately the cost that they pay to carry out frontier tasks, whether that's coding large code bases or developing new scientific advancements. And this has been clearly substantiated by independent testing and data around the inference capabilities of Blackwell versus the prior Hopper generation. Then recently, the independent testing firm Signal 65 analyzed the GB200 NVIDIA server and showed that at high interactivity, we're not just seeing incremental gains, we're seeing up to 24 times performance per GPU compared to the Hopper generation of servers. But at typical interactivity thresholds, there's an average of around 20 times a generational leap in terms of the tokens produced by the Blackwell server compared to its prior generation. And it's this improvement in performance at high interactivity that is going to make these systems performant for the leading clouds and able to generate more tokens and accordingly more revenue in the coming year. And when the cost per token plummets, the tokens per watt metric actually escalates 20 times more, that's going to present an economic unlock for designing new agentic experiences. With that additional token production for a wide array of users, the recent adoption of coding agents especially is going to allow these systems to run for hours at a time for the same cost as a short chatbot session today. And so models that used to use kilowatts for a given inference job will just reduce that to a kind of a double-digit number of watts. And the AI agents then will have access to more memory and will be able to do hours of engineering simulations, for example, without necessarily blowing the power budget of existing data centers. And so it's going to be this 20x improvement in performance that really drives that shift to agentic applications. So with that, I want to move on to my second prediction, which is the role of scale up in improving tokens per watt, and how photonics is going to become a critical differentiator for networking. So over the past decade, the industry is focused on improving scale-out networking, and we got very good at connecting racks together with improving Ethernet standards and minimizing congestion within data centers. And now I think there's going to be a new paradigm that we face as the industry runs into the limits of copper, specifically within connecting data center racks. It's we're going to talk a lot about how much compute and memory bandwidth you can concentrate inside a single rack and how efficiently those components talk to each other. And the frontier training is now dependent on tens of terabytes per second of memory bandwidth that's sustained continuously. And then mixture of experts models need all-to-all communication between chips and dynamic routing across experts. Reinforcement learning is a growing workload that also requires synchronization across different environments that might be hosted on different servers. And so as a result, we're going to need improved latency to let these workloads actually turn into improved model training experiences and be able to train trillion or 10 trillion parameter models in a fraction of the time. And the small delays can compound and crash training runs along these steps. Adding a few microseconds for each hop can collapse throughput and then also stall out memory systems. That leads to the need for more improved checkpointing methods for training runs, and it leads to a scenario where it actually becomes difficult to achieve frontier training results on the generations of hardware that we have now. And so for that reason, I think we're going to see major innovation and scale up in the coming year. we're running into limits of how much electricity we can push through existing cables. Beyond 200 gigabits per second per lane, signal integrity is extremely difficult to maintain, even with the latest innovations in SerDes and active electrical cables. With the improvement of SerDes being able to handle over 200 gigabits per second per lane, Jensen said that it's now like running the entire world's internet through a switch. And signal attenuation can become prohibitive. The effective reach of passive copper cables can shrink from 2 meters to just inches at terabit speeds. And then engineers have to make use of digital signal processors and retimers to recover that signal. And by 2026, I think we're going to hear that relying on copper for rack scale AI fabrics is going to actually increase the power budget to a point that for interconnect that rivals the compute power budget, which could ultimately affect the power utilization efficiency for data centers. So in 2026, I think we're going to see the transition of co-packaged optics from experimental prototypes to commercial reference designs as a critical differentiator in new AI systems and initial volume production. This shift, it might happen faster than expected in the industry as we see the arrival of integrated switch platforms with CPO, the resolution of critical raw material bottlenecks, and the introduction of software-defined testing to improve reliability. The conditions I mentioned about the constraints within the rack create a strategic imperative for CPO that's driven by the need for additional power efficiency. I think overall, we're not getting the improvement in power efficiency from traditional optical receivers and pluggable optics, meaning that an optical transceiver can consume up to 50% of the power of a network switch system. And as we get to the gigawatt scale, the pluggable optics that are being used can consume 15 to 20 picojoules per bit. Whereas CPO can actually reduce that by 2 to 3 times. And that's a strategic enabler for data center operators at scale. Once you factor in the fact that CPO also reduces electrical signal loss compared to copper, by up to 5 times, we're looking at CPO being a significant driver of continued gains in tokens per watt. So I think we're going to hear a lot more about optics in 2026, especially in reference designs for future production, if not at scale within systems that are on the market, just given supply chain constraints, as well as the need to ensure reliability at the switch level. And there are major constraints as well as the availability of raw materials like indium phosphide that is the essential material for lasers that power silicon photonics. And today the supply chain is slow to scale, but the suppliers do see those constraints easing in the coming year. So by the time we get announcements that make co-packaged optics a key part of switch architecture, I think we're going to have additional supply come online that allows us to transition to production deployments and actually get ahead of forecasts for mass deployment of this technology by 2027. And next, I want to get to the role of foundries in this ecosystem. I think that because of the need for additional efficiencies, that chip design companies are going to cast their net more widely for foundries that are able to develop custom ASICs that support specific workloads and really encourage silicon diversity through supplier diversity. In 2026, a major constraint for AI systems is simply whether the supply chain can execute at scale to get us all the compute we need to deliver on the demand for AI compute. And so those bottlenecks go across the supply chain from foundry capacity to advanced packaging, memory availability. And as a result, I think we're going to hear a lot of announcements in the coming year for higher utilization of competing foundries and then also packagers that are able to diversify the product roadmap of semiconductor leaders. And in just the past year, we've seen designs that are qualified across multiple foundries to improve volumes for chip outputs. The usage of trailing edge nodes for individual components, frees up leading edge capacity for compute critical tiles, and this it shows that heterogeneous integration can work to combine inputs from multiple different IDMs, but it requires creativity on the part of chip design companies to diversify their supply chain. And we're seeing this in packaging as well. For years, a small number of advanced packaging flows, were the bottleneck. And now, as a result, vendors are qualifying multiple OSATs to spread assembly across geographies and accept different process characteristics in exchange for throughput and schedule certainty. And so, I think in 2026, utilization of alternative packagers will increase because shipping matters, and there's also improved designs that are coming from different corners of the global OSAT market. And memory is a gating concern for training and inference. And for that reason, there's tighter planning between logic vendors and memory suppliers, as well as multi-sourcing across different HBM sources and different memory foundries. I think we're going to see continued mixed memory configurations of bringing together both HDDs, SSDs, as well as HBM for multiple suppliers to develop systems that can handle the memory throughput and drive continued gains in tokens per watt. And then when we get to co-packaged optics, there's actually foundries that specialize in that as well, and that could be an area where chip design companies compare among different suppliers in order to get access to the latest process technology. And the last prediction that I think supports the need for improved tokens per watt in the coming year is the CPU and DPU innovation for reinforcement learning and agentic tasks. So right now, I think the overall direction of the industry is moving away from the GPU to totally drive the performance of AI. The reliance of new AI systems on DPUs and modern CPUs, really makes some of those more legacy systems the air traffic controllers of servers and the data center. So DPUs that include, smart NICs, are really important for connecting some of the storage resources I mentioned to the GPUs that need data and ultimately, lie idle if they don't get fast access to memory. I think we've seen significant announcements of advanced DPU innovation just this year at CES with the Bluefield 4 DPU coming onto the market, and then Pensando DPUs as well, really being a critical driver of agentic reasoning and a reason why advanced systems can be used both for training as well as high interactivity inference. And then I think we should also talk about CPUs because they're not just orchestration glue anymore. They're differentiators for high-value AI systems. And specifically in RL and agentic workloads, CPUs can handle a lot of the load, including environment simulation, decision logic, and scheduling that are really important for carrying out verifier workloads that ultimately determine the performance of AI models. And in practice, a lot of these pipelines hit CPU bottlenecks to date, And when it comes to things like simulations and control loops, CPUs can actually starve the expensive GPUs themselves. And I think we're seeing an increasing emphasis on improvements in CPU performance, making the CPUs themselves high bandwidth coherent participants with significant DDR memory and high memory bandwidth. And that's, I think, a significant reason why CPU innovation has become a core part of new AI systems, right along with new GPUs. And that's an area where we're going to see additional XPU innovation in the coming year, because while the GPU roadmap is dominated by two vendors specifically, CPU innovation can come from much broader parts of the ecosystem, and ultimately improve the performance for more open rack architectures, as well as open chip architectures. And that's where we're seeing specialized designs that optimize CPUs for AI workloads and get us away from the monolithic GPU cluster that the industry built around in really the pre-training phase. And I think the roadmaps that we're seeing right now point us in that direction of how we can use additional compute resources to get better outputs for specific stages of the AI lifecycle. Whether that's NVIDIA's announcement of the Rubin CPX GPU that is really optimized for the context phase, and minimizes the amount of memory relative to the overall Vera Rubin system. It's clear that specializing hardware for specific stages of the life cycle, from training to reasoning, is going to be critical for giving data centers the portfolio of compute needs that will power the future of their agentic experiences. And so, this is all happening in the context of software optimizations that, I think deserve equal participation in this discussion, because it's really when you combine the latest hardware with improved intention mechanisms, as well as quantization of models, along with AI-specific networking, that you get the upgrade in tokens per watt that ultimately will drive improved performance in the industry and revenue generation. Can't get to all the software innovations that are doing that to date, but I think it's a core part of the mixture of expert models that ultimately drive the 10 to 20x gains in tokens per dollars per watt that we're seeing so far in the market. So to wrap up, I don't think a $1 trillion industry can just be supported by faster chips and improved specs. It's going to be about improved utilization and showing customers that they can get better performance and better revenue generation out of the systems that are being shipped. And that's going to require specialization and efficiency across the supply chain. I think that's an area that's going to drive a lot of innovation. It's going to drive a lot of change. I'm excited to track the industry this coming year and keep up the discussion with all of you. But I think it's clear that we're going to be looking at a much different world at this time next year, one that implemented some of these most advanced systems and then saw the unexpected results that come from them. Until we see the end results of it, I look forward to keeping up with you, and thank you for joining.